joined us on the Blue Plate Special here in the financial district of Orange Beach, Alabama. We're at the Wharf, home of Sand Dollar Lifestyles, which provides my. You remember
your
when,
attire.
Let's Make a Deal, and they would say Monty Hall, closed by Botany 500. Well, it's like Sand Dollar Lifestyle. Oh, yeah. It always helps when we turn it on.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear out there? Okay, good. And so, and I'm not seeing anything on the camera either. So it says hello.
Now we always do a mic check. We have to talk on the mic before
Yeah,
we.
that usually helps. That usually helps. Sometimes we're a little loose around here, you know.
Yeah.
Now,
That's the way we like it.
I'm going to introduce you guys in a minute.
Okay.
I came in early, and I read the whole book this morning.
Wow.
I intended to scan it, and I read the whole book. So hang on just a second and get the business done, and then I want to introduce you guys because I'm really excited that y'all are here. But if you're new to us, we just this is pretty free form. Can get ridiculous, and we have a good time here. And we are located on the second floor at the Wharf, home of the famous escalator statues. We have 2 Marlin statues and 4 escalator statues. They look like real escalators. They're the same size. You can walk on them and take your picture with them if you come visit us. We're very excited just about this today. You know, I just got to say, you know, the guys have been in the past couple of mornings. Mm-hmm. And when Al and Jace said, you know, Mama and Lisa could come and do Blue Plate Special, I said, well, get me one of their new books. Now, has this just come out?
It did.
Yes.
April the 19th.
Okay. Well, you may know them from different things, but these are the authors of Sister Roar. This is Lisa Robertson and Miss Kay Robertson. We're so glad you guys are here
I'm glad
Thank
to
you.
be here.
today.
We are glad to be here.
And
I'm actually honored because I love your books. I mean, I'm serious.
oh, come
Now
on.
I want a book.
Look,
Oh, listen, we'll load you down with everything.
yeah.
Okay.
The first one I read, I just picked it up, didn't know who you were or anything, but I read on the back that you were from, the area.
Right.
And we've been coming here for 30 years, and so I said, I want to read this book. Well, then you start telling of places in Orange Beach and Gulf Shores, and I'm like, I know where all these places are. And when you know where the places are, it just makes it that much more interesting.
Right.
You know,
it must
'cause
have
you
been
can
the
imagine
noticer,
yourself.
wasn't
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
noticer was the first one. Yep.
Yeah.
You know, the first chapter of that is like totally true. And the rest of it, is my memories of Jones, but putting them in different situations. Right. But that first chapter is totally true. And so it's funny when we'll go to C and Suds to eat, and they'll tell me that people go take a picture of that corner table where Jones was in that scene.
Yeah.
And the pier says that people go and take pictures of where the pier hits the sand.
Right.
There.
Yeah.
So. Everybody doing good? I know y'all are on vacation, and it's
we're having a blast.
EBP, the guy says. Everybody but Phil.
Yeah. I always say EBPSI because it's everybody but Phil and Si.
Okay.
Because Si doesn't come either.
They would run the vacation for us.
What do they?
Phil would want me to step there in the room and wait on him hand to foot, and I'd just be looking out there wishing I was out on the beach. But I said, I'm so happy he don't want to come to the beach. It would not be fun. He would be a drag. He's a great man. He does a lot of good things. He's funny. He's a lot. But the beach, he'll always describe it as, why would I want to go out where you turn red, everybody blisters, they're suffering before they leave the beach, and then you go out, and you there could be sharks out there somewhere.
No, there are sharks out there.
Yeah.
That's what he says. And you could be, you could get a shark attack. And then, there's
And then sand in every orifice.
That's what he says, the exact words he uses. He said, that sounds real fun, Kay. That's just where I want to be. And I said, you can sit here in your camouflage recliner with the dogs we have left, and you can go to your land every day and look at it, and whatever you want to do. I'm going a place that you don't like, so we don't need you, and you don't. He said, well, I still wish you were here. I said, well, get over it.
I
earned a vacation.
guess if you're waiting on him hand and foot, I guess he does wish you're still there.
Yeah, I made that mistake many years ago. I just couldn't help it. I just learned how to be a servant, and now I said, look, Phil, you know, we're grown and we're grandparents and we're all great grandparents and all of this. I said, you know what? I can't do everything I used to do. Mm-hmm. So really and truly, we do the cooking half and half. He'll do it half the time. I'll do it half the time.
See, I wonder, though, if that waiting on him hand and foot, I wonder if that's a Phil thing or a generation thing.
I think it's a generation. There's no doubt. I saw my grandma do it.
Yeah, because I was meeting a friend up at the hunting camp, and we were waiting on our boys to come. And I'd been at another camp, and my friend is older, and he was sitting there on the porch with me. We're waiting, and he says, "So you were up at Beaver Ruin?" And I said, "I was." And he said, "How long?" I said, "A week. I was writing." And he said, "Well, who cooked for you?" And I said, "Well, nobody." And he said, "You're there for a week?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You didn't have anybody to cook for you?" And I'm like, "No, you know, I mean, I'm by myself. What do I need anybody to cook for me for?"
Yeah.
You know what Phil told me this morning, right before I talked to him right before I came, and I said, "Have you run out of food?" I'd left him a big old heavenly ham. And if anybody don't know what it is, it's $100 fancy ham, but it's delicious.
They're called honey baked now.
Honey baked.
Oh, yeah.
Changed their name. Yeah.
And so, but they were heavenly.
Yep.
And so I said, you're tired of the ham now. What have you went to? He said, well, he still keeps his commercial fishing license to keep nets in the water if he wants fish.
Right.
Because we live like beside the Washita River, or if it's up, we live in it. That's what I always say. Yeah. And he said, oh, man, when I pulled it up, his favorite catfish is Opelousas. An op, he calls it. That's his favorite kind. And he cuts it little thin, crispy, thin pieces, delicious. One of my favorite foods. So he had to rub that in on me. And he said, oh, I've got op to eat every day till you come back, if I want to. And I said, how about saving a few of those for when I get home?
Now, what kind of catfish is that for real? Is it
It's a really, it's this called an op. This is what I know. It looks different. It's kind of got pale yellow on the bottom, and it's kind of a grayish. It is totally look different from the blue channel cat, which is the normal catfish we have in Louisiana. But this op, he's like a specialty.
Okay.
And that's our favorite. So I can't even eat the blue channel. Now I can only eat the op.
Yeah.
And then if they fish with poles, which does not feel, but it's rest of my family, if it was, they catch those white perch.
Oh yeah.
And brim, and the brim and all that. So Phil is so good at dressing, and he can just about dress them and fillet them, and there's no bones.
Right.
Delicious.
Right. Oh yeah.
And he does it with this big butcher knife. I even look at that knife and think how I could accidentally hurt myself. He said, never touch that knife unless I'm watching, because I'm accident prone. I'm an accident waiting to happen.
So keep the knives out of your hands.
That's right.
He said, hey, get a little knife. Don't get this big one. Every time I come in and see that in your hand, it scares me to death.
That one is a little bit different. That catfish is a little bit different than Tony, who is Phyllis's husband, who is Phil's daughter, which is a whole nother story.
Right.
But he went fishing the other day with our neighbor who does guided kayak fishing.
All right.
And so he went and it was a gaff, a gaff something.
Gaff top, sail cat.
Yeah. And so a little bit different because you don't have to be quite as careful with those Opelousas cat as you do those other ones.
Yeah, the saltwater ones, they're bad news.
Yeah.
And the smaller they are, the worse they are.
That's what he said.
Because man, I around here, I mean, don't wear your flip flops out on the pier, you guys, because I've seen these catfish go right through tennis shoes. And
Wow.
one night we were at the house, and there were a whole bunch of kids, and they were all about, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old, and I hear, and there's some parents, and I hear, Dad, and here comes a whole bunch of boys, and I said, which dad? And I said, okay, you're up, but I saw him coming, and he was holding his hand like this, and there's a catfish head out this way and tail out this way, and I said, Todd, has that catfish got you? He said, yes, sir. He gets up, and it was straight through his hand.
Oh, my
I mean, it was
goodness.
out. We cut down here and pulled out.
Yeah.
But man, there's something
Well,
on
I'm
there.
telling you,
It
toxic.
hurts.
Yeah.
Bill's done the exact same thing. He said, and he's done it quickly, and he's actually had to cut before. Phil thinks he should have been a doctor in another life. But he just gets that knife, okay, well, it's clean. Let me do this. Boom, boom. He said, now this will not hurt but for a second. And he's just, the man's like, what? And it feels like, boom, boom, boom. And the man was, whoa.
Yeah.
He said,
It didn't hurt Phil, but yeah, there.
It
That's
hurt
right,
him.
that's right.
But he was, I will say, he's the fastest, best user of a knife I've ever seen to never get hurt by the knife. To me, I look at that as easy danger for me.
And he cuts out hooks and stuff, when they
Yeah.
get them in their
Oh,
mouth.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's done that to me.
Well, tell Phil that there's definitely sharks. Okay, that's my youngest son, Adam,
Wow.
and he's catching those from the beach.
Wow.
Okay, and he says that people will come by sometimes and say, "Are you chumming?" And he'll say, "No, ma'am. There's the sharks are already here. We don't have to chum." And they'll say, "Well, how do you know the sharks are already here?" And he said, "Well, there's a test you can do. You take a cup and you wait out a little bit and take a little of the water in, swish it around, taste it, and if it's salty, there's sharks here." So,
That's a good
yeah.
one. That's a good taste.
Hey, you guys tell me now. I've got to say, I was, Al just brought me this yesterday, and so I was expecting to come in early and just scan it so I would be able to talk about it and everything, and so I just opened it up, and I opened it up to part of your story, and I said, well, let me read the foreword that Sadie wrote.
Yeah.
And so I read that, and then let me read the introduction that you got. And before I knew it, I'm halfway through and into the story about Phyllis, and I mean, I am captivated. And so the book is called Sister Roar. Is it out now?
It is. It's out.
Okay. And I just got to tell everybody, and we'll put, I just we can put a link to the book, right? Where would you guys like people to get it?
Well, you can go to mine and Al's website. It's alandlisarobertson.com.
Okay.
And there's a link on there where you can get the book.
Okay. Can we link to that?
Drop it in the chat box right now.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
And so, but I got to say, the name of the book is Sister Roar. Claim your authentic voice, embrace real freedom, and discover true sisterhood. But this isn't just a girl book. I mean,
It should help everybody.
I enjoyed the book, and I also, I mean, this. If I had to say, if somebody said, "Give me just a couple of words on what this is about," this is about reaching the end of yourself, and redemption, and hope.
That's right.
Because we all,
And forgiveness.
yeah, right.
That's what we want people to get out of this book is that no matter how far you think you've strayed from the Lord, He's always been there. You've turned your back on Him, and He's just waiting for you to turn around so that He can embrace you, forgive you, and redeem you. Redeem your life and put you on a path that you never ever would have imagined. With blessings, just 1,000 times more than what you could think about.
In this book, and I know you guys have read a lot of books too, and so I know there is a there's an expectation of a book from celebrities, and there's an expectation of what Christian books from celebrities are like, and this one blew that out of the water. Okay, I am amazed and proud of both of you guys because there's so many people who need to read this from you. Because both of you guys, you guys stepped out of the boat on this, and I talk to people a lot. My friend, a pastor, he's got me saying a phrase, and it is that there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. And so I've said that to some people, and I've had people go, well, you don't know what I've done.
Yeah.
And of course, my answer to that is, well, did you have an affair with a married woman and get her pregnant and then kill her husband? And they'll go, well, no. And I said, well, that's what David did.
Yeah.
And he
was a man after God's
repented,
own heart. That's
and
right.
And God set his man after his own heart. And so, I think forgiveness. I think forgiveness is the only answer for our country right now.
Yeah. Oh, I do too.
I mean, because with the anger and the generational anger, and if somebody's going to be mad because my great granddaddy did something to their great granddaddy, I guess they're just going to have to be mad because what am I going to do about it? But the idea of forgiveness that you guys so greatly display in this book, and I mean in different ways, forgiving other people, forgiving yourself, embracing the forgiveness from God, which that's something people have a tough time with.
And I think that's part of the problem. I think when a person doesn't feel as though they can be forgiven, like, well, you don't know what I've done.
Right.
Whenever they don't feel like that they can be forgiven for what they've done, then they're not willing to forgive anybody else for what, whatever has taken place. Like you said, generations ago, or maybe somebody in their family has done something to them, and they cannot feel that. My mom was that way. My mom never thought she was worthy of God's forgiveness, and she held grudges, and she was not pleasant to be around just because of that. But I believe that if she ever could have grasped, and at one point she said, "How do you know I'm going to heaven?" I said, "Because you've done what the Lord asked you to do." "Well, how do you know you're going to heaven?" I said, "Because I try to live every day doing what the Lord asked me to do." And that's all he asks of us to do, is to obey his commandments, to live by his gospel and to obey his commandments. That's all we have to do.
Become like Christ.
That's right. And as Phil says, love God and love each other.
Right.
I mean, if we could just get there, wouldn't our
his
world be a
favorite
better
line
place?
on that is, "Give me a break.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love one another. What's wrong with America?"
Yeah.
I'm quoting my husband.
At what point did, and talk about it if you wish, let people find out in the book, but at what point did you guys both decide to get as personal as you did in this book? I mean, was that something that kind of evolved as you were doing it, or is it something you went into and said, this needs to be done?
I think probably anybody that reads any of our books, especially, mine and Kay's, anything that we've written, we've been very honest. And whenever we speak, we're very honest with where we were and where we are now, where the Lord has brought us to. And Kay does that too. Whenever she's speaking, she does the same thing. So my thing, whenever I became a Christian, whenever I finally allowed the Lord to redeem me, my thing was honesty, because I had not been honest from the time I was a little girl, truly honest. And so my thing was honesty. Well, I thought, well, if I'm going to be honest, then I'm going to be honest about my failures, but then also God's victories. because without the victories, then it's just failures. But look, whenever you have failures and then you have victories, we win. You know,
Right.
we get to go to heaven, and so we've been doing it. I don't know, for as long as we've had a time that we could speak. I guess that's been 10 or 12 years, and so we've just been that way.
And here's what I say. If you know something in our hidden past that we've forgotten, tell us. It'll be in our next book or our next speech. And that's a fact, Jack, as I would say. And that's the truth. Now mine, Lisa and I have a complete different story because when Phil was a good boy, he was really good. I mean, our major mess up was ours together, and, we were pregnant before we were wed. And
But you chose life.
I chose life because I would never, and I had no maturity, and yet I knew that baby, I would raise it. And then somebody said, well, what if Phil won't marry? At the time, Phil was in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was in somewhere. Yeah, Louisiana. No, I was in Ruston because we're going to Louisiana Tech, And he was, not me. And, then they said, well, what if he won't take you? And this wasn't out of my hometown. And I said, what do you mean? I said, we've planned. He's my soulmate. This is who I was going to marry. For the first time I saw him, I said, that's probably who I'll marry. He was the quarterback of the football team.
When did you meet him? How old was he when you met him?
14 years old.
He was
I was 14. He was 15.
Okay.
And then his little brother drove me crazy, which was Si. And he kept saying, just wait for me to get a little bigger. Okay, I mean, you're going to like me better than Phil because, I'm a real man. I said,
none of us can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you weigh 120 pounds? No, thank you, please. And where my deal was, and I'll try to quickly do this, my grandmother, I lived with her half my life because we had the only big store, and my family ran it. It was my daddy and his brother, and of course my papa and Nanny did it, and then my papa passed away, and so when Nanny was at her house, I was with her, and that's why I spent half my life with her, because she was lonely, and Mom and Daddy worked all the time, so I had a wonderful place, and we'd sit in the swings and talk, and what's so wonderful about her, and this is what I'd like to get to your audience, she's a grandmother. She went to school only till she was maybe 15. She might have quit before then, but married at 15. But back then, they were ready to get their kids out of the house.
Yeah.
They didn't have to feed them. And she told me so many stories. But what she did say, and she said, and you've got to learn, we talked about being married, we talked about all that. I said, well, I know the kind of man I want. I want him to hunt and fish like my daddy does, because I like that with my daddy. And I lost my daddy my first year of high school, too. But anyway, she would tell me all these things. And she said, but one thing I want you to know right now, she said, you are going to have to fight for your marriage. And I just looked at her and I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to know who I want, who I'm going to love, and I know how to wait on her. Because like I did, I saw the wives give so much with their husbands, cook for them and things like that. And I had it so planned. And I said, and then I'm going to live happily ever after. Well, that's when God smiled and the devil said, oh, can I do a job on her? And so that first year at Tech, they made, even the married ones, stay in the dorm at least some months, like during spring practice.
Right.
Before the game, before they really started the football season, they wanted their mind totally on football. So he was away from me, and I was pregnant with Alan, and I just thought, well, that's okay. He'll be fine. He wasn't fine. He wasn't following Jesus, and I think he never did. He just, kind of like me, saying something that you didn't even understand what you were talking about. And so then it's like he came back from every time he stayed with all them and then hanging out with all them. I just saw the bad take over the good. The devil take over a good heart. The devil there. And then I was just, then he was this other person. I mean, he drank, smoked dope, he ran around. I knew all that. And I just said, what would Nanny say, my grandma? And then I really thought, she told me I'd have to fight. How did she know this?
Wow.
And for 10 years.
What would Nanny say? Did you have a bracelet?
Yeah.
I should have that.
Should, yeah.
And I said to myself, and then I said to God, I said, God, I don't know what to do. I love him, and I know he loves me, but the devil's got in him, and I don't know how to get it out. I know I should pray and do better, but I was already embarrassed being pregnant at 17 or 16, and then 17 before Alan was born. But here I look so young. I did go to church once over there at Tech when he was in school, and it was a church that really didn't know how to reach out to people, and do that and all that. And then I sat there, and they would just all look at me like, look how young she is, and she's pregnant. I got the, like she has leprosy type of treatment, which was terrible. But everybody doesn't know, and hopefully more and more churches are learning. Don't be, we're so good and you're so bad.
Right.
We're all lost. We all sinned and come short. But then him, when we really have him. So I really struggled. I didn't want to tell my grandmother the bad stuff because I didn't want to make her sad.
Right.
So I really held it myself. And I had nobody to talk to. But what I kept saying is her words just kept coming to me. Verses she told me, fight for your marriage. Okay, there's nothing more important. And, love your babies. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to fight for my marriage. And the fighting for my marriage was literally living with him that 10 years of hell, sheer hell. It was. And I remember the night we had, he's finished tech and all that, and he was working offshore before he started a job, teaching and coaching and all that. And it was just like, I just said, God, please show me a sign that something's happening. Well, he showed me Phil comes in half drunk and says, I've been thinking about this all day. And I was saying, yeah, over how many Budweisers have you been thinking this through? And he said, you are really ruining my life, me. I said, well, I'm sorry about that. I feel like I've been helping your life.
And your kids. You and your kids.
You and your kids.
Because you had three of them at that point.
Yes. And he would never claim the ownership of them. They were mine. And I think he knew, as passive and nice and all that as I would fight to the death for those three kids. And he knew that. So he never, ever said something like, I'm good. He don't need the kids. He would be gone. They'd be on their own. So they would, Alan, he had to mature quick enough as it was. But then when he come to my work one day, the girl I worked with, we'd just come back from lunch, and we were fixing to start up the stairs, and there was this truck out there, and she said, oh, my God, Phil's here. Oh, she said, do you think he's going to come in with a gun and shoot us all? She had a vivid imagination. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go to the truck, and that way you won't be hurt. And she said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll look at the window. If I see a sign of a gun or anything, I will call the police. I said, okay, that's our deal. That's what we'll do. And when I opened that door and his tears were running down, never saw him cry because he was searching for his freedom, and he was, I'm a real man. I'm a man's man and all that. Men's men don't cry. Well, he was crying. And then it was like my heart just started melting. I said, God did it. God is working on his heart. And then for something that I never thought I'd have, I wanted to just hug him and say, we're back. I love you. We got it. And I just was so strong. And I said, I'm so happy you feel this way. But there's something in your life that's missing. And until you find that, I'm afraid it can't work for us. And then, see, that shocked him. And he looked at me and he said, I know what you're talking about. you want me to go to church? You want me to talk to Jesus and all that?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I do." But there was one preacher who a long time ago, I didn't tell you, we managed a bar for a year and a half. And me to do that I just said, what would Nanny do? And then I saw Nanny said, always stick with them, stay with them. So I sat there and give those beers out all the time, and then I wouldn't let them have too many, and I would tell them, "This is not good for you." And then Phil would say, "You're running the business, Kay." I said, "I don't care. I've got to give them instructions." So I was, and they come in, and somebody would hit on me because I was young and nice looking, I guess, at the time in my 20s, you know. And I said, my customers that were regulars there, they'd say, "Leave her alone. She's a Christian lady, and she would never, never do anything like talk to you. She loves her husband, and she's faithful to him." I mean, they would just give my whole thing. And I would say, "I can't believe they're doing this." And they would do it like that. And they said, "If you touch her, every one of us will get on you and kill you." Anybody flirting with me never did it again, I'll tell you that. And they saw it in me, but they said, "Kay, why did you come with him?" And I said, I debated on that. But I thought, I'm the only good thing that's in his life. And if I disappear, I was afraid he'd die. Because he had had 4 wrecks drunk. So I had to say, I've got to stay by him. Does it mean I was for that? I hated it. I didn't like being there.
Right.
But I was following what I thought God wanted me to do. I really was. And the people we leased it for, they were very good people. And sure enough, at the end, they came over before our lease was up. And so we're taking it back over. But we had a contract, a lease. And they just, because they saw us doing so much better than them. And I really think I helped a lot of people, maybe from not getting drunk driving or wrecks and all, because I did try to help them, even in that situation.
Right.
And I had hid some of my money in a little lockbox that Phil didn't know about, but I had hid just for something, for me and the kids, if something happened. And I'm going to tell you something. When he got mad, see, at them, and he said, "You're trying to break that." "No, you're not." Of course, he was drunk. And I was thinking, he's going to do something stupid. He's going to do... And the next thing I saw was first the man was flying across the room. And he hit the wall. And the next thing, the lady was flying right behind me. And then he came by me, and I said, "Did you kill them?" And he said, "They're not dead." He said, "But I tell you, I've got to leave town for a while." He said, "I'm going to another state, and I'll let you know eventually where I am." He just took off. I met 5 police cars, by myself, to have to explain all this. Of course, they were going to. Then they sent word to me, "We'll drop all the charges on Phil if we get the place back right now. And I need this much money." And they knew exactly what we had in the bank. Now, somebody in that bank wasn't honest.
Wow.
But then Bill Smith came.
Yeah, Bill Smith came, the preacher where I went to church, and he came and tried to talk to Phil. This was before he did that last leaving like that. But, and he had come and tried to talk to him. Phil's sister brought him up there, his younger sister. And Phil said, "So you're a preacher?" He was in the back, not in front of the guests. And he said, "Yep." And Phil said, "Have you ever been drunk?" Of course, Phil was about half drunk. And Bill Smith said, "Yes, I've been drunk, Phil." He said, "Well, imagine that, a preacher." He said, "I wasn't a preacher then, Phil. I was just like you. I have a past." And he said, "But I love God now, and I have a different path." And so that night when I let Phil come, it was only because to our apartment we had got, because we were kind of hiding out, me and the 3 boys. And I said, "You know what? That's where we are." And he didn't know where we are. He couldn't even find us. So that when he wanted to talk to somebody, he said, "I want that preacher that came in the bar. That's the only person I'll talk to." And I said, "That's the only person you need to talk to." And so when he came in there, the boys and I we'd leave a little while because I thought he needs privacy,
Sure.
you know. And I really didn't want the boys to hear what I was saying with Phil's part, not Bill's, but
Right.
Phil's. And you know, he wrote down everything. And so he told Bill Smith, he said, I will meet with you tomorrow night because I'm going to read everything you wrote down here because you could have just made this up. And he said, do you have a Bible, Phil? And he said, well, Kay does. She's got all kind of Bibles.
So he's going to check him out.
Yeah.
Check the preacher
He
out.
checked every verse as to what he said. And he wasn't going to talk till he did. The next night we came home and there was a note on the door, come to the church, hurry. And see, this again is Phil with no patience. Couldn't wait on us to get back. I just went for something at the store. Couldn't wait, had to go up there. And when I got there, he was at the church, in the front of the church. I mean, it's the back. We came in
Right.
front. And they were at the baptistry, and he was saying, who do you want to follow for the rest of your life? And he said, Jesus Christ. And he baptized him. And I looked down, all three of my boys, little tears were running down their eyes, and mine too, of course. And then Jason looked up at me and he said, Mama, is he going to go to church with us? And I said, yes, he will. And he said, Mama, please tell him not to cuss in church. I'll be so, my friends will just die if he comes in there talking ugly. And I said, Jason, it's when you become to Christ, you're a babe. You got to learn how to talk right. Your daddy doesn't know how to talk. And he said, well, can't we give him a crash course or something on not cussing in church? Because I'll just die, Mom, in front of my friends if he does that. And I said, we'll have to pray for him, won't we? We'll have to help him learn how to talk. And all I know is 10 years, it was all worth the wait. But I know nobody else would have waited 10 years for him. And I lost even friends because they said, well, you're just, one of Phil's own brothers said, well, if you're going to let him step on you like a rug, then you just live in it. I mean, they're so mad because they just wanted me to leave it. And I just kept saying, but Nanny said that the scriptures say one man, one woman for life, and that God hates divorce. I'm not leaving yet.
Well, let me tell you something. You know, we, America loves Duck Dynasty. They love the reruns. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's people that they're in Phil's camp, and people that they think Willie is probably the funniest, and then the people love Jason and Jep and Al, and then your grandkids. But you're the star of this family.
Thank you. Hey, you're gonna make me cry.
I mean, there is no doubt.
And Alan did tell it, and even Jason did it in a sermon. And I think it was Jason did this one, but I'm not, if it was Alan, you can tell me. But he said, he was preaching, and Jason said, everybody in this audience that have ever had a personal talk, Christian talk with my dad, would you stand up? 300 people stood up.
Wow.
And he said, okay, how many, is my dad actually, took your confession and told you about Jesus and,
Did he ask him how many did he cuss to?
I didn't know. I'm glad you didn't do that. But, and then they were just standing, and I just kept, I was just crying because, and then he said, let me tell you something. You know how good my dad can preach. He knows the scriptures. He's a mighty fighter for God. He said, but I want to tell you something right now. He wouldn't be there if it wasn't for my mom.
All right.
Her patience.
There is no doubt.
And waiting him out.
And that generational thing, I think it started with her grandmother, and then it went to Kay. It's what Kay tells her daughter-in-laws. It's what she tells her grandchildren.
Yeah.
Is the same thing. And what Kay, apart when Kay tells her story, is this, that whenever Phil was messing around and not being the man he needed to be, she always told the boys the devil is inside of him. The devil is inside of him.
I said, don't hate your
That's
dad.
right.
It's not
She
him,
never.
yeah.
That's right. She never railed on Phil. She always said, "This is the devil that's living in him." Well, whenever he was baptized, one of the boys looked up and said, "Mama, does this mean that the devil's going to leave our daddy?" And so
was
they
Chase
recognized
again.
that, you know, that they knew that. But I think it's so important whenever we are going through those struggles to not fight each other, but to fight the one common enemy, which is Satan, you know.
And they won't
And
hate.
he wants to destroy
They
us.
never hated their daddy. They hated his actions.
Yeah.
They didn't like him being mean and saying stuff to me or pushing me around or something. But they knew that it wasn't their daddy in control. Because just like Lisa said, from the very start, I wanted them to recognize that that was Satan, that was the devil. That's who you hate. That's okay to hate him.
Yeah, well, they knew that because of a good mama.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Hey, I know you have we got a hard close. It's 4 minutes until 1 p.m. and I know
Oh, okay.
you have another show you guys need to do. I just I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all being here. And
I love it.
well, you're welcome.
And you're one of the
obviously.
best hosts I've ever had.
Well, you know.
I mean,
that-
you just seem like regular man.
well, I am
funny
kinda,
man,
I am
too.
kind of regular.
And you seem funny, too. And
You put us at ease.
yes,
Well, thanks.
very good way to say it.
I do appreciate you guys being here, and I just a word to you guys before we go. The book is Sister Roar, and it's not just for sisters. You know, there are stories in here that will affect dads and sons and whole families. There is there are healing words in this book, and I really appreciate you guys being here with us today. And we will continue. You know, when you're back home in Louisiana, we'll continue to talk about this book.
And
thank
she's
you.
the one that named it, not
Really?
me.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
See, I brag on my daughter-in-laws. When they do good, I don't want you to think. Because I would have never thought of that name.
I don't think it's a stretch to think that your daughter-in-laws just think the world of you. So
Well, I always wanted daughters, and I feel like I have them now.
right,
And my granddaughters are like myself. And if anybody knows about Sadie Robertson, I mean, I looked and I said, that's a mini field preacher right
Yeah.
there.
yeah,
I mean, he was never afraid to talk in front of anybody. I mean, he's had people that say, you talk too much about Jesus. He said, oh, I don't talk enough about him. And, you know, Phil, when A&E shut us down, you know, because they're mad at Phil.
all right.
Because he will not back off his stand for Jesus.
All right.
And he wouldn't quit saying it. For 1 year, they would not let him say, in Jesus' name, amen, at the prayer. He talked to them every time through that camera to the head people. And he said, I will never quit saying it. And if you don't let me say it, then shame on you. 1 year they took that. And then they said, oh, yeah, Phil can say in Jesus' name at the end of his prayer. It was a fight. He held on, and they let us do it.
Well, that's a good hill to make your stand on.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you
We
guys.
loved it.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome anytime. Appreciate the studio bunch being here, and
Oh, I just felt right at home.
yeah. Well, good. We got squirrels and flour back there, and
Oh,
I-
wow.
So
Yeah. So you can go fry up some squirrel.
we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Bye bye.